Search is on tonight for the gunman who shot and killed a man after breaking into his home in Phoenix.
It happened early this morning near 36th Street and Thomas Road. Austin Walker was on scene today talking to neighbors and has the latest on the investigation.
A scary scene unfolding in this East Phoenix neighborhood Saturday.
I see only in the morning the light.
Police tape painted along 36th Street as speculation amongst neighbors swirl.
My reaction is scary.
Phoenix police say just after 4 a.m., officers responded to a home on North 36th Street, just south of Thomas, for a shooting call. Once on scene, they found an adult male inside who was dead. Investigators believe someone broke into the home and shot the victim. He has now been identified as 51-year-old Daniel Sainz.
Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it. You already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye up. Bye up. Let's get to this one. Let's get to the intro. Welcome back to the channel, and if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content that I stay kicking, and I appreciate the support, man. So another tragedy, a YouTuber gunned down, this time in his own home, right? To say it happens, man, is crazy, right? Because things like this usually don't happen. You know, since I've been along this YouTube journey, I've seen a lot of people that used to frequent my lives, a lot of people that supported, a lot of people that disrespected or hated my channel for whatever reason, come to a tragic end, whether it was gunned down by their own hand, gunned down by someone else, or just passed away due to illness. You know, the list is getting longer and longer every day. But the latest one to hit that list is a YouTuber known as Daniel Sainz. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say there was love lost between us, because there wasn't. You know, Daniel chose to create his content and speak on what he chose to speak on, and you got to respect it. You know, if there's a lane, go ahead and go down that lane and see where it ends up, right? And in this case, for the YouTuber Daniel Sainz, it ended up tragically. You know, over the weekend, he was gunned down in his Phoenix home. And according to what the investigation is saying, someone entered his home around 4 a.m. and he was shot to death. Now, I'll say this, you know, it's an active, ongoing investigation. So any speculation is just that, speculation. You know, there's going to be a lot of people that add fuel to the fire, create a narrative and a lot of stories on the reasons why he was gunned down. And the fact is, only him and the shooters know, and he probably didn't even know before it happened, because it happens that fast. In the blink of an eye, your life can change or your life can end. And this is a perfect example of that. Now, this is a very controversial figure. This guy was known to go live and to talk his shit, right? To disrespect organizations and peoples that he shouldn't have. Disrespected myself on numerous occasions, made several videos, disrespected Dubs, disrespected other content creators, for no reason at all than to just do it. You know, I remember referring to this guy as a J-Cat, and no disrespect to the dead. I'm not trying to disrespect him after he passed, because I never made a video while he was alive about him, right? But he was what I would consider a J-Cat, someone who was 5150, who didn't seem to have all his marbles there, who seemed to speak his mind, but at the same time was incoherent at times, whether it was due to he was inebriated or he just had a lot of hatred in his heart for people. You know, he did a lot and said a lot about certain individuals that could get you in trouble, that could get you hurt. Now, I'm not saying that this is the reasoning why this incident happened. That area right there where he lived, you know, lately there's been a lot of tragic break-ins where people are breaking in homes, burglarizing, stealing, and assaulting people. So, you know, this is not uncommon in the area where he was living. But there's a lot of people speculating. Now, speculating is, there's a thin line between speculating and dry snitching. So let's go ahead and save the speculation. But there is a lot of people that are saying, right, that this could have been due to an ongoing beef on YouTube or something other than that. Whether that's the case, we'll never know. Unless these people are apprehended, this person or people, and they go to trial and it's brought out, right? I'll say this, to say that this man was going to meet his demise at some point in time due to gun violence is not far-fetched, right? If you recall, this is the same man that was live about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. While live, he was getting into a verbal confrontation with people on live, disrespecting people, and standing outside of his home on his street where he was allegedly shot at. That live, I believe, is still up. You can go to his channel, the Daniel Sainz channel, and see that live. You might have to, I don't have a reference for it, but you might have to just go through his lives if you want to see that. But it's a fact. And this man, even after being shot at, continued to disrespect and to challenge the people that allegedly shot at him. Now, I say controversial because this was the types of things that this man involved himself in. The disrespect, the utter disregard for people's threats or people saying that they were going to do something bad to him. And there's a lot of individuals that are like that. They just don't care, and I'm sure he would care now because this affects his community, his neighbors, his family, his friends. And to me, it's another YouTuber gone, another content creator or personality that's gone because of senseless violence. But it happens, right? This type of violence happens all the time. And it's unfortunate that we have to play it out and see it. Now, let me tell you something about Daniel Sainz. About 4 or 5 years ago, he started creating content. And he was a very big supporter of my channel in the beginning and would chime in. He's from Arizona, so he would chime in and ask about certain California politics, which I never, even behind the scenes, was willing to give just because it was none of my business. And I think because I wouldn't answer some of the questions that he believed he wanted to be answered, he chose to start to dislike me. So he made several videos, talking bad about myself, talking bad about Dubs just because we were friends. And I would see it. It would get sent to me. People would send me these videos. And the disdain when he said my name, the hatred, right? Always boggled my mind because this is someone I never met in real life, never actually talked to besides a few messages. And I knew a little bit about his story, so I started to research exactly who this guy was, if he was a dangerous individual to myself or to anyone around me, right? And I realized quickly that he was someone who just was in a place in his life that he didn't seem to be happy. He was living with his mother at the time. A grown man. So it was kind of like a situation where he felt life was against him. Look, we've all made decisions, poor decisions in our past. All of us that are ex-convicts actually made at least that ultimate one decision that got us incarcerated. So we can't blame anyone but ourselves. In life, if you want to change, if you want to be recognized as something other than an ex-convict, you have to be transparent. You have to be, you have to realize the errors of your making, and you have to keep pushing, right? Every day it's a push, because you could fall right back into that criminal activity and that criminal behavior. I'm not going to say this man was out there still indulging in criminal behavior, but he seemed to get a kick out of glorifying certain aspects of it, right? Letting people know that he wasn't no punk and that he was willing to get off with anyone. So recently, there was another content creator that created a challenge, and the challenge was go outside challenge, be outside challenge, hit them streets challenge. I guess it was something to that effect, right? Catch you outside challenge. And I remember that challenge was issued to myself as well as Dubs. You guys can't even go out of your own homes. You guys can't even be outside in them streets. You guys are PC'd up in your closet or in your home and que la chingada, this and that, right? And, I hear things like this and I say to myself, okay, I don't go to Walmart, to Target, to the mall, to the stores. Yeah, I don't do any of that. I'm a single father with a child, man. I have to go school shopping. I have to take her to practice and do what I have to do. So I don't have to prove anything to anyone where I go or where I don't go. One thing I do know for sure, that as a content creator, as a social media personality, I'm never letting people know my next move. I'm making my next move my best move, giving them some knowledge they can't get in college. I'm never putting my address or my street or my whereabouts at any particular time out there, because there are people that will go down that rabbit hole to find where you're at, that choose to look into your past, that choose to look into your future, right? And that future might be bleak if they have any chance of getting at you. So you need to understand, as a content creator, you have to be aware and on point at all times and be ready. You stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And that's my philosophy, and I'm going to live by that. And this guy, Daniel, chose to associate himself with that challenge. He chose to go on his street. He chose to show his address. He chose to let people know where he stood, where he laid his head. You never bring the motherfucking Wile E. Coyote into the Roadrunner's den, right? But he chose to do that. And I'm not going to say he did that in particular because of that challenge that was put out there, but he did, and he did mention myself in dubs in the video, disrespecting. I'm outside, I'm in front of my home. Can you do that? No, I can't, and I won't, right? And it's not being a punk or being scary, but it's being aware and being an adult, right? And how'd the situation end up for this man? There's no more going outside. There's no more going inside. Somebody went inside, and now they had to take him outside in a body bag, right? And I'm not saying that this investigation or this murder, right, is due to that particular incident, but he sure made himself available. If you guys remember Savage Studios, another individual who made himself available did disrespect several people, myself included, others, was very controversial. There was a lot of people that hated him, or they loved to hate him, or hated to love him. And he slipped. He let people know where he was working. He had just got a new job at a tattoo parlor, and he chose to, put his business out there. And it didn't take very long for someone to catch up to him, someone who was disgruntled with him for whatever reason. And his life was taken tragically and swiftly, right? So Daniel Sainz goes on that list. He's another one that, was creating content. It was very controversial. He made a lot of enemies. Now, there's his history, right? And I looked into this man, and I looked at a little bit of his history. And he allegedly was part of a prison gang at some point in time, according to him, and fell out of favor for whatever reason. And rather than just moving on with his life and choosing to change his ways, he continued to agonize with the fact that he was no longer in that type of good standings. And that could get people, that could eat at people, people that are not ready to drop out of the gang, that were pushed out, that were removed, that were whacked and told to get on, rolled up, or chose to roll it up due to their safety and security. Whatever it is, some people don't know how to let it go. They don't know how to sit back and realize that that part of their life is over, regardless if they want it to be or not. It just is, and with this guy, watching his videos, he agonized over the fact that he wasn't a gangster no more. He was no longer a gang member. He was no longer welcome into that type of circle. And instead of moving on and pushing on, I think he wallowed, from my perspective, he wallowed in that. And in doing so, he chose to continue to antagonize and disrespect, people that were still involved in that. And in doing so, that created enemies. So right now, like I said, it's an active, ongoing investigation, and speculation is considered dry snitching. So we're not going to speculate and say who did this and why they did this. You can read between the lines. When you're disrespecting people on YouTube, and I'm not saying this is what led to his demise. It could have been just someone breaking into his home to steal, and he surprised them and they surprised him. But when you're disrespecting people continuously, making videos about them, creating an air of controversy when you're already controversial, when you already have a past that is not kosher, it's not pickle, right? It's not good. And you choose to make yourself available and let your whereabouts be known. Some people will pump you up and say, yeah, that's right. He's a real one. He let everyone know. But them same people that are going to sit there and say that are going to go behind the scenes and shoot your video to the next man. Hey, this guy's talking shit. He's over here. He's over here. People like to create drama. And when something like this dramatically really happens, Then they sit back, wow, I didn't think that was going to happen. Yes, absolutely. This is real life. These YouTube Yaradas and streets and all these different fucking titles that people have given are for reals. What you say out of your mouth means something to somebody. Okay. That's why I've chosen, to take myself away from talking about certain organizations or certain people or certain groups. I might talk about the Norteño movement or Southsiders, but I always try to do it in a respectful manner. And it's because, I'm not part of that life. So I'm giving them the respect that they so richly deserve. Now, there's going to be certain content creators that disrespect them on the daily, that feel that they don't have that coming, and to each their own. This man right here chose to make enemies out of people, regardless of gang, just anyone he felt that he just didn't like, he didn't like. And when you speak things into existence, when you are consistently challenging people and disrespecting people and playing people short and soft, thinking people won't come after you or people won't pull up, things like this could happen. If you guys recall, just last year, Manny, Sin City Manny from another content creator, man, that got involved and actually killed another content creator and his wife right there in Las Vegas. He'll be going to pre-trial later on this month, allegedly, right? It was another thing. Two different sides arguing back and forth on YouTube, and it became reality. And when they became enemies, not only on behind the scenes on the internet, but real life enemies due to things that were said. And once it's said, it can't be taken back. Two people tragically lost their lives. One guy is going to be locked up forever and facing the death penalty. So that was another YouTube incident that was ugly. This guy, a lot of people didn't know he was a YouTuber. A lot of people didn't know his channel because it was very small. But those in my community and those that have been in the prison genre knew that this guy was from Arizona, an ex-convict, had did time, claimed to be part of a group at some point in time. Whether that's true or not, that's nobody's business but his own. And he lost his life. He lost his life. And I know there's a lot of conspiracy theorists that are like, oh man, he had that coming. He was doing this and doing that. Nobody has it coming. There are content creators right now that are watching this or that are concerned because of things that they have said. There are people that think it can't happen to them, but it could happen to anyone. It could happen to me right now. So, if you love your family, if you love your peoples, your friends, make them aware of situations like this. Make them aware that anything can happen to anyone at any time. I could tell you guys about the list, and I'm going to be making a video on that sometime this week about the list of people that I've associated with or befriended, or even were my enemies on YouTube that have passed. And the list is very, very, very long. And I start to look at it and it's like, wow, what has happened, right? So the latest one is Daniel Sainz. And like I said, man, I could sit here and be upset, mad, disrespect him because that's all he did to me. But I choose the higher road. I choose to say rest in peace to that man. Whatever his demons were, whatever got him caught up in this situation, whether it was just something that happened on the spur of the moment or something more than that, let the investigators investigate and do their thing. It makes no sense to add speculation or fuel to the fire. And I know there's going to be content creators that do that. Oh, he did this. This is why this happened. Like they know, like they were the cucaracha in his house when he got shot, right? The fact is, no one's ever going to know. And that's the way it's supposed to be. When things happen like this, I could sit here and be an asshole and say it couldn't happen to a better person. But that's not the route that I'm going to take. The route I'm going to take is it's fucked up that it happened to anybody. For those that supported this guy and watched him, this is how his life ended up. When you live by the gun, sometimes you die by it, right? For those that didn't, go watch his channel, man. Judge for yourself the type of character he was. Like I said, he wasn't a nice man. I'm not going to sit here and say he deserves all the respect and all the love because, like I said, this is the first video I've ever made about this guy. I didn't make one while he was alive because I refused to acknowledge the disrespect that was coming out of his mouth. And now that he's passed, I'm not going to disrespect him. But what I am going to say is this is definitely a situation that I'm sure could have been avoided if he would have just zipped his mouth, or could have been avoided if he would have put better locks on his doors. With that being said, let me know what you guys think. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I honestly and truly believe in. That's the betterment of all people. This video is sponsored by Barrio Liquors in Turlock, California. If you're ever in the Barrio and ever in Turlock, man, pull up to Barrio Liquors and get you something cold to drink. Also by Sticks and Stones Yard Service in Tucson, Arizona. If you live in the Tucson area and you need an estimate, make sure you say Gunners Collective TV sent you. You'll get a 10% discount. Make sure that you Google Sticks and Stones Yard Service. This is sad, man, but it happens. Bang, bang.